You're listening to the Results Driven Organizations podcast with Dr. Tanya Lowe, a podcast of curated conversations with C-suite leaders and those who support organizational growth and development. Get ready for inspiring interviews, educational lessons, and thought-provoking discussions that will challenge you to execute something new and innovative that will drive results in your organization. And now, here's Dr. Tanya Lowe.
Hello. You're listening to episode 31 of the Results Driven Organizations podcast with Dr. Tanya Lowe. Using my results-driven philosophy of strategy, leadership, teams, and customer experiences, I help organizations develop their best kept secret, their human capital. This podcast is designed to expand the conversation with C-suite leaders and those who support organizational growth and development, and what it really takes to create, develop, and maintain results-driven and high-performing organizations. Our special guest today is Tiffany Collie Baily, the CEO of Girls Inc. Atlanta. Tiffany leads Girls Inc., a national organization that spans over 1,500 sites in 350 cities throughout the United States and Canada. Tiffany is a highly accomplished executive renowned for her exceptional ability to deliver tangible results and achieve ambitious goals. Throughout her career, she has held various key positions, including COO, Deputy Executive Director, Development Director, and CEO. In each role, she has consistently demonstrated her expertise in devising and executing innovative strategies with the dynamic realm of healthcare nonprofits and philanthropy. Tiffany possesses a profound understanding of the nonprofit sector, community healthcare management, and fundraising endeavors. Her areas of expertise lie in strategic planning, fundraising, development, and fostering strong community relations. She's a busy lady. With her extensive knowledge and experience, she has consistently made valuable contributions to the organizations she's worked with, paving the way for their success. Tiffany, welcome to RDO.
Thank you, Dr. Tanya, for having me. I appreciate it.
I'm so excited to talk to you. So for our listeners who may not be familiar with Girls Inc., tell them a little bit about Girls Inc.
Well, the mission of Girls Inc., it is simple, but it is powerful. It is to inspire all girls to be strong, smart, and bold. And when we say those words, we just don't say it as a cute little thing. We say it because it stands for how we work with our girls, how we lead our girls, the curriculum that we provide our girls. When we talk about being strong, it is about helping our girls to develop to be strong mentally, physically, and emotionally. When we talk about being smart, smart is all about science, technology, engineering, and math, STEM, preparing our girls to come into a workforce in the 21st century where technology and STEM is where it's going to be, but wanting to make sure that our girls get the opportunity to have that exposure because so many girls across this nation don't, as well as women haven't. And so we also focus on reading literacy. We want our girls to make sure that they have the skills, the reading comprehension skills. And right now, I'll tell you, before the pandemic, about 78% of our girls here in the greater Atlanta area were behind in terms of reading. And with the pandemic, that has only exacerbated the problem and the issue and the gap for our girls. Mm-hmm. And then when it comes to being bold, bold is everything that it sounds like. It is I am my brothers, my sisters, my community's keeper. It's about teaching our girls how to advocate for themselves, to understand what it means to advocate in advocacy. We want them to know their worth and then add tax to it. It is about teaching them to be the future leaders of tomorrow with life skills, college and career readiness, the growing jobs when it comes to trade and skills. We really want to prepare them for financial empowerment. And so in bold is where we take the time. We do the work so that we can sow into the future leaders of tomorrow who ultimately be the ones who are taking care of us.
I love it. Strong, smart, and bold girls.
Absolutely.
Turn into confident, bold, and empowering women.
Absolutely.
So I know you're doing some great work over there, and I wanted our listeners to hear what Girls Inc. is all about. So let's jump on into this leadership discussion.
Okay. All right.
So Tiffany, you're no stranger to leadership. You have held many leadership roles in your career. What inspired you to pursue leadership in the nonprofit sector?
It really started for me. It was rooted in me from a young age in terms of giving back and community. My mother was a principal and teacher in urban school system in Dayton, Ohio for 40 years. My grandparents, my paternal grandparents, my grandfather was a pastor. Grandmother was a work from home woman, mother, but they ran a pantry. And so they fed the community. And I can remember being a little girl in the fields as they would glean from the fields and they would take those fruits and vegetables and put it back in the pantry. And I remember being there with them and being really close to them and being able to see that. And then I remember my grandparents moving to their 80s and they could no longer go down the basement stairs of the church and they moved the pantry to their home. So it was rooted in me, from the time I was a little girl of the sense of community. And I am my brother's and my sister's keeper. And there go I before the grace of God. And that I have a responsibility to give back and to pay it forward. So coming into the nonprofit world for me, I think it was destined. I think that there's no other place I could ever see myself because I understand the responsibility that I have to make my community, this world, a better place. And I understand uniquely that it starts with me.
Wow. So community service is in your blood. It's in your genes. And you've taken it to a next level.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you say that you don't see yourself anywhere else other than the nonprofit sector. I read your bio. I can see you running a Fortune 500 company somewhere. So
speak that, Dr. Tanya.
Yes. So Tiffany, I like to tell people I grew up in nonprofit. My first jobs, out of college were in nonprofit organizations. And so nonprofit organizations face many constraints. How do you balance the need for innovation and growth with the responsibility of stewarding resources?
That is a really great question because as nonprofits, I say to folks that we are very much a business. We are in the business of, I am in the business of empowering girls to be the next leaders of tomorrow. And in that business, like any business, I have to be innovative. The world is changing. The skill sets that my girls will need to take on the world are changing. And so it is the responsibility that I have to make sure that as a nonprofit, we are staying in line with and keeping up with the trends, the needs of what our girls will need for the future. But yet there are limited resources by which I have as a nonprofit to many times provide that innovative piece. But this is where our partners come in. This is where philanthropy comes in. This is where we don't do this alone. I have amazing staff. I have amazing partners. Again, that community, we have created amazing community, right, that comes in to support. I have great staff who are very well skilled in youth development, and they know all things youth development. But being able to bring in partners who are skilled in technology and understand the needs of technology and what it's going to take for our girls to grow and lead in the technology world. So we rely heavily upon the partnerships, right? But it's not just the partnerships that come in. It's a community impact, because as a partner, what you get out of it, how you're helping to build and design the next workforce to come into your organization. So it's an investment that our partners are making. So when we talk about the investment, right, it then allows me to stretch and to expand the resources that we have, because my partners understand that this is a really good investment, that you're sowing into good ground, right, and it's fertile. And what you're going to reap 5 and 10 years from now will be the next set of leaders that come into their organizations.
Tiffany, you just hit on something there for me. So guys, you're listening to this podcast. I'm sure somebody is saying,
well, I don't work with kids. How does this relate to me? Well, let me tell you how it relates to you. She talked about partnerships. Even in your organizations, you should be creating partnerships. You should, and within your organizations and outside of your organizations, relationships. I just, talked with a group of folks on yesterday about how the landscape of work is changing. And so what are your technology needs in 2025? 50% of your workforce is going to need to be upskilled or reskilled. So what are you doing? It's workforce development, not just at the youth level, but right within your own organizations. And within that, it creates a stronger culture for the organization. So I know somebody listening needed me to like help them understand that, because people can be so literal. They can be so I'm here to help them with it, Tiffany. So that is great, because I know when I worked in nonprofit, it was always, I was the van driver, the educator, the janitor. I did everything, getting the women where they need to be, doing all the stuff. And so it is, it's powerful and impactful work that you do that prepares these young girls and communities for the workplaces that they will work in the future. And so for companies listening, I really wanted them to take those, understand those key components and how they can put those into place now. So how do you define and prioritize key leadership qualities needed to effectively lead your organization?
I think even right now, we are in a restructuring process. As we have come from the pandemic, and I think every organization, corporation, nonprofit alike, business has experienced this new spectrum of what employees look like and what employment looks like. And so we've had to reevaluate that. As a nonprofit, many times we recognize that we don't always we're not at the top of the pay scale. And there have been times where we have hired those who had more will than skill. But as we move forward and looking at what is best for the girls, the communities that we serve, will is great, right? But I really need folks who come in with the skills that aren't just set for today, but looking for those who are skilled for where the organization is going in 3 years.
Yeah. We call it future proofing, not just filling that position for now, but what am I going to need 3 years from now, 5 years from now? You want people who are fat, Tiffany. And when we say fat, we want them to be flexible, adaptable, and teachable.
Yes. And that's it. That really is. I don't want to be the smartest person in the room.
Absolutely.
Because if I am, that's a problem. And so I surround myself with folks who know way more than me, especially in specific talent and skill areas, that they bring me along, right? I have their back and they have mine, right? And I think that is so important for us. So as we reorganize and restructure our organization, we really are looking to see, what talent is there within that can be skilled up, right? How can we reskill some of that talent? What talent are we missing, right? And then being able to go out there and, as you said, make sure we find those folks who are fat as we're bringing them in. And then also assessing what is the culture, right? And how do they fit into the culture? And also, how do we begin to slowly adapt and change the culture? Because I want to retain employees. And what does that mean? But also helping our employees and our staff understand that everybody plays a role in culture. It doesn't just start with me as the CEO, but everybody plays a role, and helping them understand the responsibility and the role that they play and how we can all work to move culture forward.
That's a nugget, guys. Everyone in the organization has a responsibility when it comes to culture. And I believe too often, other leaders in the organization, other executives, managers, and so forth, they feel like it's all the CEO's job. It's your job to do that. But we, even in my own company, we all have a responsibility in creating the culture and maintaining the culture.
Absolutely.
I love what you said about being able to hire from within. That's one of my, I love that, because I see the challenges that organizations have when it comes to hiring. Nobody wants to write another job description. Nobody wants to post something else on Indeed. But if we spend that time developing those people that we have, really kind of, filtering through the weeds, if you will, and developing people, when we see that potential, that's the missing piece a lot of times, Tiffany, is people don't spend that time in development. And so,
and it really is. And we have some awesome folks who work for us, who are passionate about the mission, passionate about our girls, and there are talents within them that have yet to come forth, right? Because someone's yet to ask them. Someone's yet to really sit down with them and have a real conversation about, I see you here, but I also saw that you did this. How does that fit? You like that? Oh, okay. Well, what if I give you some more opportunities to help develop that talent with us? And so some of it is just as simple as having a conversation. It is being present, and being present intentionally with your staff to see what else they want to do. So what do you like about your job? What do you really, because where I see you and where you want to be could be two different places.
And don't be afraid to ask the question.
Absolutely.
Too many leaders are afraid to ask the question of where do you see yourself in 2, 3, 4 years, because they're not future proofing, they're not future hiring. I hired you to put the square peg in the square hole, and that's where I want you to stay. But what happens when that square hole turns into a triangle?
And not being afraid of what that answer, even if the answer is in 3 years, I want to own my own nonprofit. I want to, that great, right? So how do I, in those 3 years, right? How do I still help you gain the skills that will get you to the next space and place that you want to be? I'm not going to hold on to my blessings, right? I'm not going to I'm not going to tell her nothing. I'm not going to put her in nothing because I don't want her to take those skill sets. No,
right. She's going to take it all.
Right. No, I want you to grow, right? Because a little part of me, when you do make it to that next nonprofit and you open that next nonprofit, I want them to say, who did you work up under? Oh, they taught you well, right? That all comes back to the experience. And so someone did it for me. Someone didn't just keep me up under a bush, right? They allowed me to let my light shine. And even times when I didn't know I had a light, they saw a spark.
Wow, that's a nugget there. That's a nugget there. When you can see something in someone else that they don't see, it allows them to tap into in that potential that they didn't know they had.
Absolutely.
Or that desire for growth that they didn't know they had. You also said something else that was really, I think, important. I always remember when I was in the workforce, the people who were impactful, the leaders that were impactful. I also remember the ones who I learned from them, but I learned what not to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So,
you need both.
You need both. And so I think it's important that, wherever someone, whether they stay within your organization or they go to another organization, they can say, I learned a lot here. I learned, this is where I learned this, and that's a part of culture as well, creating a continuous learning environment. A continuous learning environment. So, wow, this is good stuff. I hope you guys are getting these nuggets, and writing them down and thinking about how you can apply them in your organization. So, Tiffany, what I think about challenges when I was in the workforce, one of my challenges was, because I was always a team of one. It was always a team of one. I was like a Super Bowl of one until I had to have a team. And it was a challenge because I was like, wait a minute, no one taught me how to do this. I knew how to lead me, right? So I had to learn the hard way how to move through that challenge. And now, I teach and talk about it now. And so can you think of a time or share an example of a challenging time in your career where you had to learn something and it was a challenge, or even maybe a challenging decision you had to make as a leader? And what was your approach? And what did you learn from that experience?
Where do we start?
The platform is yours.
Right, where do we start? So, I'll talk about coming into Girls Inc. of Greater Atlanta as the CEO about almost 6 years ago. And when I came into the organization, Girls Inc. of Greater Atlanta has been around for 47 years in the Greater Atlanta community. At this point, we've served over 120,000 girls in our history. But when I came in, the organization was at a point where there was a deficit. And there was a deficit to the extent where, it was, are the doors going to be able to stay open? What does that look like? And so coming in, I came in almost as the cleanup lady, the fixer, having to very quickly understand what was and what wasn't, and who was and who wasn't, right? And so it was really that conversation about with staffing, are you in the right seat on the bus? Are you on the right bus? And in order for us to turn this organization around, financially get the programs up and going, in our heyday, we had served 8,000 girls in 1 year. When I came in, we were serving 400 girls in a year.
Wow.
And so the decisions that needed to be made, and they did, you couldn't make them in a year. There were some really quick decisions about what stays, what goes. And I had to put together a new strategic plan in 4 months. I'm brand new. I'm brand new to this in terms of this organization, but very quickly having to assess and make some hard decisions about this isn't working. This person isn't a fit. You're not on the right bus. You're not on the right seat. And so those were hard conversations because if folks are looking at, who are you? Who are you? Right?
Where'd you come from?
Right? And who do you think you are? To make these decisions, right? Yeah. But it was literally, I even had to at one point make a decision. Okay, I don't think that y'all gonna be able to pay me this pay period. So I may have to sit this pay period out myself so that my staff gets paid until I can get things going, right? I was able to call upon some relationships that I had created previously to get an influx in so that didn't have to happen. But I remember coming into this organization and thinking, the board didn't tell me this, right? I understand what it needs to come into a nonprofit. I understand what it is to do my research, to look at the 990, right? But the 990 was deceiving. It was truthful, but it was a little deceiving, right? I didn't get in. The board didn't tell all of that. What was interesting that the board didn't know. The board was disconnected.
Wow.
And so even having to make some hard decisions with the board,
right,
of saying that, yes, I'm here, but you've been here. So this isn't just a Tiffany come in and fix, right? You as a board have to step up as well. And so for a CEO to say that to her board, that's not always kosher, right? But you hired me, National backed me, I'm here now. Right. So we're all going to roll our sleeves up in this one. And so like I said, there were a lot of hard decisions around staffing. Right. And so I came in recognizing, and you know how when you first go to college and people say, look to your left, look to
that person's not going to, that person be
right. Right. And that was the conversation I had to have. Right. And I said, but I'm going to walk that out with you, even when we ask you to leave or you choose to leave. I'm going to support you and do it in a respectful and an honorable way. But you're going to know as we start making changes around here, and it was really easy. I actually didn't have to fire anybody. Most folks, as we started to make changes, put structures in place, remove themselves.
I love when that happens.
Right. Because expectations were set. They hadn't had this particular staff had not had evaluations in 7 years, nor had they had raises in 7 years.
Mm.
So we revamped job descriptions. So
Yeah.
what is your job description? What do you do? What do you
What's a
I
job
don't know.
description?
I haven't seen it. Okay, well let's dust it off, right? And
Right.
pull out your resume too. And people, what do you want my resume for? Because I'd like to see how the job description aligns with your resume and where you've been and the skills that are on that and how it doesn't align. It's not personal, but I'm trying to figure out a structure here in an organization. And
Mhm.
so that was one of the harder decisions that we had, because I recognized that the decision that I was going to make innately was either going to have to let folks go or folks are going to remove themselves, which was going to bring us down to a skeleton crew.
Mm.
But I was okay with that skeleton crew.
Right.
Because as you talked earlier, you have done every role in a nonprofit. You've been the janitor, and I quickly realized that CEO stood for Chief Everything Officer.
Yes.
Everything, right? If I need to be the front desk lady, right? If I need to be the payment taker, if I need to be the facilitator that day, right? Then I need to put on my heels and go out there and have a partner meeting and ask for that big $1 million gift. That's what I needed to do. And so that first year was a year of really redefining who we were as an organization, and even more, who do we want to be as an organization? What is it that we want to do, right? I know our mission, but how are we going to do it? Where do we want to serve, and how are we going to serve? And what is the staff going to look like to get us there? And so there were ups and downs in that time frame, but those first 3 months, that's that 90 days, it was show, what do they say nicely? How do you get off the boat? You gotta.
Right.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And that's what it was about, right? And so I've had other decisions that you've had to do like that, but nothing like coming into an organization where that has such a long history of serving and doing good and thinking. And all I could think was, not on my watch. We're not gonna close on my watch. Not on my watch.
Not
Right?
in Atlanta.
Not on my watch. Like, you got me here now, so not on my watch. We won't do that. And so I'll tell you that we went from that organization that was struggling to serve 400 girls to, 4 or 5 years later, we're serving over 2,000 girls a year. And we went from a budget that was at probably about 700,000, and now we have almost a $3 million budget. Wow. And so it was doing the work. It was making hard decisions. It was sometimes, I think this is going to work. We're going to pilot that. Oh, nope, we're going to change that model. And not being afraid to say that didn't work. Right? But not sitting in it too long, because, sometimes we can stay too long. We know it's not good, but my pride is in there, and I know, okay, so that next, right? And being able to say that, but also having a team around me. That supported my decisions, good, bad, or indifferent.
Yeah, that's so important.
Yes,
that is so important. As you were talking, I mean, I've got like probably 10 nuggets already, so I hope the listeners pick them up too. I just want to say, in the board's defense, they saw your skill set and they were like, she can handle it, right?
Lord.
But leaders aren't perfect, right? Leaders aren't perfect. And so just like we talk a lot about developing our staff and our teams, as leaders, we have to continuously be on that developing cycle for ourselves. Leaders don't have all the answers.
No.
Leaders need strong teams, right? I mean, you needed a strong team. And so you needed to know who's paddling the boat, who's drilling holes in the boat.
Yes.
I need to know that.
That's the truth. And there were those who were drilling holes in the boat, and that was reality, because they were stuck in what was, but not where we were going. Right. And so they were drilling holes and sabotage, thinking that they were helping, or sometimes knowing that they were sabotaging. Yeah. But there were enough people that surrounded me that believed in the vision. Yeah. Right. Yeah. That really offered covering. Right. So that what was supposed to, drown me in the boat, right, kept me afloat.
Right. Right. It's a mindset, right? It's a mindset. And things are changing around us every day,
Yes.
I was sharing that, there was a time when a waitress would come to your table and take your order, and now robots are taking your order at the restaurant. And so things are changing. And so as we all have to embrace change, and that
Yes.
change may not look good, it may not feel
Right.
good, it may not come with all the answers,
Right.
but we have to embrace change. Going back to something you said earlier about, I had to go back to some of those partnerships, some of those relationships.
Yeah.
Guys, you need to make sure that you are developing internal and external
Absolutely.
partners, because here it was, she was in an organization and she thought, okay, I'm gonna carry the baton. You had to put the baton down, go back. And so, leaders develop strong partnerships and strong relationships. And then something else you said about, people leaving, and I wrote down, leaders discharge with dignity.
Yeah. And that's key.
Yeah.
And that's what I have learned if I've been doing this now almost 24 years, I have learned that there have been conversations with staff that I knew it wasn't a good fit. Right? We do the whole IEP plan, and I know in my heart of hearts, they're not going to make it through. So we can go through the motions of doing the IEP plan, or we can say, look, we got 6 weeks here.
Right.
6 weeks that you can improve. And if that's what you want to try to do, let's do that. Or you have 6 weeks and I'm going to give you some time, paid time, to help you try to find another job. Right. But we got 6 weeks. Right. I will even write a letter of recommendation referring you to the next place. And it doesn't mean that they were a bad person. Yeah. They just weren't the right fit for our organization, that they did have talents and skills that were not useful for us. Yeah. And so I think it's about how you do it, and it's the integrity, right? Because again, what they go out there and say about Girls Inc., right? Even though they may be saying, well, I don't like to, they're talking about Girls Inc., right? And so I always am protective of the brand of Girls Inc. I represent the brand of Girls Inc. in every decision that I make and in every move that I make, right? And so I always want to make sure, because I want someone to do that for me, even when it's not a good fit, right?
Even when it's not a good fit. Tiffany, leaders had a lot of challenges before the pandemic. What do you think kind of overall are some of the biggest leadership challenges that leaders face today, and maybe some suggestions on what they can do?
Oh, wow. Personally, for me, what I saw was that coming from the pandemic, our workforce got younger. And I'm not going to say the values, but in terms of how someone now chose to work and what was important to them about work, it changed. And I learned that as a leader, I had to learn to adapt. It wasn't always about my way or the highway. And with this new workforce, we are very much an organization that has been, we have kids. And so that virtual piece doesn't necessarily work. But I recognize that is kind of the world that we have shifted into. And so how do I become flexible with this new virtual world of giving people the space to work hybrid? And what does that mean? I laugh, and I'm still working through work-life balance because I don't still understand it necessarily as a leader because I don't have it, but I want others to have it. You know what I'm saying? I want, so I am prayerfully working through work-life balance with my staff and how that means and what that means, but how does the job still get done? And, and how does that, and all other duties as a son, how does all of that work with work-life balance? And so that's what I have found, is that being able to adapt to meet more needs of my staff as we come out of the pandemic. With my younger staff, I recognize that I sometimes, I'm not Mama Tiffany, but I have sometimes had to become Mama Tiffany and be okay with that. and be okay with that sometimes. But I also have to know when to draw the line.
Right.
Draw the line and what that looks like. Because just as we are developing girls, we serve girls ages 5 up to 24. And the average age of my staff is 23. So there is still yet one of my babies that could be in my program.
Wow.
So they're teaching my babies. And so I had to understand that there are certain expectations that I had of them that they just looked at me and like, what are you talking about? I am doing that. You're not, but that's okay. I'm not going to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Right. But we're going to start a development program for you internally as a staff to get you to where you need to be. Right. So as a leader, me being more flexible and adaptable to meeting the needs of my staff, but also, being able to bend but not break. And I think having to know those lines and have those well-defined lines and when is and who's worth me bending over and who's not.
Right. These are good things. As you talked about the younger workforce, the workforce is getting a little bit younger. I've heard some CEOs say, just juggling the different generations in the workforce. We all have different work ethics, different work ethics.
Yes.
And so, it goes back to development of this may be your mindset, but these are the goals of the organization. And if you're going to stay here, let me help you get to a place where you can be successful.
Exactly.
Another thing you said about, sometimes you have to be Mama Tiffany, and that scares so many leaders. But coming out of the pandemic, it's like, look, I just want people to do their job. I want people to do their job. People are still, they're still trying to get it together emotionally, financially. There are a lot of challenges. And so I know growing up, it was just like, you're the worker, I'm the boss, do your job, and that's it. But now I think leaders do struggle with what's the fine line, how can I be supportive? A lot of the reports out about the future of work, they're talking about that. And so it's another growth area, I think, for leaders.
And it really is, Dr. Tanya, and I said this about our girls, I think, and I think for myself, coming up as a leader, it was work, go get it, be successfs,ful go above and beyond, right? There wasn't a whole lot about feelings in there. There wasn't a whole lot about emotional health, right? I grew up in a Baptist church home, and it was taken to God in prayer. But it was about, as an African-American female, you have to work that much harder. You have to, you figure it out. And what we're working with our girls to say, right? Our girls, as we're teaching them about leadership, is that there's a whole person there, mind, body, and spirit. And as you are becoming this leader, I also need you to take care of your emotional and mental health. And here's what that means, right? That you are going to be sad, you are going to get mad. Let's help you really understand what the difference of being sad and mad is, and helping to recognize that. You're going to have anxiety, but what are the healthy coping skills that we help you to develop to manage that, so that you become not just a strong leader and driving the numbers, but you become a strong person emotionally and mentally that helps to balance. And there's if I say work-life balance means that to me, right? I don't balance my emotional health, my mental health with the drive to succeed and lead. And so now we're starting having those conversations that when we talk about developing our girls into leaders, I want them to have that balance, right? So, they can do better than what I've done as a leader in terms of being able to manage that work-life balance.
Yeah, but you've got some help. You've got some help. Wink, wink.
Well now, and let me tell you, I wouldn't know what to do without my help because I wouldn't, right. So here's the piece of also as leaders, right? You need people in your corner, right, who can support you in this leadership journey. Because I think so many times as leaders, people think that you have it all figured out. And I think it's also sometimes hard to be able to be vulnerable with somebody because you don't want to look like a failure. You don't want to look like I don't know what I'm doing, right? And so having, executive coaches who you can sit there and say, here is my struggle. I struggle with this, right? And hold me accountable in how I move through, and hold me accountable of what I say I'm going to do to get better, right? That has been a real lifesaver for me, right? Because there could have come to a time where I'm just like, okay, I've done what I can do here, I'm done. And it wasn't I was burned out, right?
Right.
But it was kind of like sometimes you hit the wall, and sometimes you need somebody to help you tear down the wall.
Yes, absolutely. Leaders need a place where they can take the cape off.
Yes.
Yes. For ladies, somewhere you can take your lashes off, take off the face front, kind of sit back and be like, okay, what I need, right? For men, let your tie loose, loosen that belt and just kind of sit back and like, okay, I don't know. It's okay to say, I don't know, because sometimes you don't know, or sometimes you don't, your thinking is different. You need someone to help you through the thinking. And that's what we do with our clients. And that's what we do with leaders to help them see a different way, another way of looking at things. So let's see, I wrote down, you said so many yummy things about challenges, the virtual hybrid thing. It's not going anywhere. It's not going anywhere.
And it's not bad, but you have to understand how to use it and how to manage it, and how it works within your workplace,
and how to supervise. How do you supervise someone who works remotely? Yeah,
that's key. One of the pieces we're doing with some of our teens this summer, and actually moving into the school year, is that we want to teach them about these technology jobs. But a lot of these technology jobs, they're working from home. Well, if that's where we're going, if that's what it is, right? Again, it's a new version of how we set our girls up to be these leaders of the 21st century. And what does it mean to work from home? And how does that, all of that. So, we're used to doing job settles, take them in the office. What happens when the office is, it's in your corner of the living room.
Yeah.
So helping them to develop the skills that keep them moving and well-versed so that they're successful in those positions. Because it's not as easy as it seems. It's just not.
Yeah. It sounds like the same skills that you all work to impart on the girls that you all work with are the same skills that the staff need.
It is. And it's so funny when you really break it down on the most basic level, you begin to see that, right? It's just like, oh, wow. I wish all my staff had a girl sink in their lives when they were coming up, right? Yeah. Because of the work and what we really are imparting. So now a lot of what we are imparting on our adult women and even gentlemen, right, are the same skills that we are reinforcing with our youth in our programs. Yeah, it's the exact same.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, guys, I hope you are enjoying this conversation. You're taking down these nuggets and you're thinking about, wow, those are some of the same challenges that I'm having. Sometimes I think it's helpful for other leaders to hear leaders say, these are the challenges that I'm having. Sometimes you need to hear someone say it so you can say, wow, I'm having those same challenges too. Well, how would she deal with it? Oh, I never thought about that. So I hope you're getting some good nuggets from this conversation. So Tiffany, our final question is, what are you reading that we should be reading?
So I am wrapping up reading Bishop T.D. Jakes' Disruptive Thinking. And it really challenges me as a leader to step back and break the mold and not be afraid to break the mold, right? To really be disruptive. And so as we work to do our restructuring, I'm deep in the heart of that book and saying, what we used to look like, who we used to be, we are still Girls Inc. The mission is still the same, but how we deliver and how we show up is different. And it has to be different. And it has to be different to support where we're going. Now, where we are but to support where we're going. And some of it would be uncomfortable. Much of it will be uncomfortable, right?
Yep.
But in that, being uncomfortable forces us to grow. It forces us to really look at who we are. Well, who do we want to be? And who should we be, right? Not just for ourselves, but who should we be for this girls and youth that we're serving, who are going to be the ones who are leading us in the future. That's who I owe it to.
Yeah,
I owe
future.
it to them, to the future, right? So if I have to be uncomfortable today, so that they have the opportunity to be the strong leaders of tomorrow, then I owe that to them. I owe that to them. And so sometimes being disruptive means blowing it up. And I think right now, as an organization, we are blowing it up, right? And some people are looking at me like, did she really? Yes, we did it. Yes. Yeah, you had that title. Yeah, that title's no longer, and nope, and you no longer in that, nope, yes. But I got something else for you. Yeah. and we're gonna do it a different way. And even the conversations that we have with our partners is different, right? Yeah. We love our partners. Our partners do amazing things with us, right? But it costs to be the boss. And so as we work with partners, we not only want to have you see the impact that you can make with, having the job shadow, coming in and mentoring and playing with the kids, but I want you to understand the financial cost to that. And I want you to be ready to commit to a multi-year commitment of that. I don't want these, these one time, I'm gonna come in and hang out. That doesn't do anything.
Right.
And sometimes, as a partner who's been just coming in once a year and hanging out and they write a little check, we're like, oh, well, thank you. No, I have higher expectations.
Yeah.
Yes,
you've got disruptive thinking.
Right. I have higher expectations. My babies deserve more.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that is what it is about. Right. And it's being afraid to say that some partners may walk away. But that just means that they didn't align. And that happens. Right. But I far believe and have seen that there are more partners who align with where they're really willing to put their time, their talents, their money, their treasures, their wealth, where their mouth is. And they're willing to understand that this isn't just a one time, it takes multi-years to do this. They're willing to make the investment.
Yeah.
And so, but it takes me starting off as that disruptive leader to get outside of myself and outside of my feelings, outside of my worries. And he's going to tell me no. And they're going to look at me like I'm crazy and allow that space to be whatever it's going to be and be okay with it.
To be strong, smart, and bold.
Strong, smart, and bold, right? And I have to stand in that as a leader, right?
Oh my God, I love it.
I have to stand in it. It's not something that I can just expect of my staff and expect of my girls and my youth, but yet I as a leader don't stand in it. And I think that's what it is. And being strong, smart, I have to be disruptive.
That's the disconnect oftentimes between people who lead and people who teach. It's, it's that do as I say, not as I do.
Yes.
But the reality is people do what they see.
Yes.
And so when you show up strong, bold, and smart, people see that.
They do.
And people are always watching. So in your organizations, watch, how are you showing up? I always ask people that. How are you showing up?
Yep.
What are you showing people? Because what you're showing as a leader is what you're going to get back.
Absolutely.
We've been chatting with Tiffany Collie Baily, CEO of Girls Inc. Atlanta. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Visit the show notes page to see how to connect with Girls Inc. and Tiffany, and be sure to grab a copy of Results Driven Organizations, the 4 Keys to a High Performance Workplace. And while you're there, you can grab your special gift for being a valued listener at freegiftfromtanya.com. Until next time.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Results Driven Organizations Podcast with Dr. Tanya Lowe. Be sure to review the show notes for the resources mentioned, and don't forget to grab your free gift available at freegiftfromtanya.com.